This is the chapter 6 synopsis, which talks about using credit. So let's go over this briefly, and I'm going to give you some main points. You can read the slides yourself, but I'm going to give you some main points of what to focus on. So make sure that you go over the slides and read the textbook as you have always done when studying for the final exam. But I will go over some main points that I think are the main takeaways for the chapter. Okay, so let's dive right into using credit. Okay, so what are the basic concepts of credit? Well, why do we use credit? Well, credit helps you to smooth out your consumption, because when, early in life, when we're just starting out in our 20s and 30s, we don't have a lot of assets saved up. If we had to save up so we could buy a house or buy a car, it would be very difficult. So having credit allows us to smooth our consumption over our lifespan. So we use credit for large cash outlays, for convenience. You can also use credit for investment purposes. I don't mean that you should take a cash advance on your credit card and put it in the stock market, but you can, if you want to, you can go on margin for which is borrowing money from Schwab or Fidelity from your brokerage company in order to invest more in stocks. You can get a loan to buy an investment property. That would be an example of using credit for investment purposes. Another use of credit is to meet a financial emergency. So if you have credit cards, then if you have a financial emergency, you can use those credit cards. They're there. So, in the past, at the beginning of the semester, we talked about how much should you have in your account for emergencies. And financial planners recommend that you have like 3 to 6 months of your salary saved for emergencies. Well, if you have credit cards, if you have credit, you don't necessarily have to have 6 months of your salary saved, because you could use credit if you had to. I mean, you could, instead of having 3 to 6 months of salary in a savings account earning nothing, you can maybe put it in investments that would earn you a little bit better return. Excuse me. Okay, what are improper uses of credit? Well, that would be using credit to meet your basic living expenses, using a credit card to pay for groceries, to pay for your basic expenses for the month. That's a bad trap to fall into. Using a credit card to make impulse purchases, not a good strategy, because that's how you end up with credit card debt. Using credit card to purchase non-durable goods. A durable good is a good that lasts longer than a year. So a washer, a dryer, a refrigerator, a computer, television. You should only use credit cards or use credit to purchase durable goods, not clothes and things. Even though clothes last longer than a year, they're not considered durable goods. So you shouldn't use a credit card to purchase coffee and groceries and those kinds of things. Don't overspend by using your credit card. So it's a slippery slope, because if you have cash, that cash is actually coming out of your wallet. People tend to spend more when they use a credit card, because they know they're not really seeing the money go out of their hands, and they know they don't have to pay it off for a month. So it's easy to overspend. Also, consistently paying only the minimum payments on your credit card is a bad practice. So those are some examples of improper uses of credit. So here's some rules of thumb to not get in trouble with credit and to use it responsibly. If you purchase something on a credit card, it should outlive the amount of time it takes you to pay it off. If you're starting to increase your use of credit, watch it if you're using your credit card more. It can turn into this buy now and pay later can turn into a nightmare, because what happens is you just end up with too much debt, and it affects your current spending when you're having to make such large credit card payments. Using it for convenience, of course, is a problem. And of course, do not use a credit card for basic living expenses, impulse purchasing, or non-durable goods, which was mentioned in the last slide as well. So here's some frightening statistics here. The minimum payments on a credit card are usually 3%, and interest rates are ridiculously high. Interest rates on credit cards they can be as high as like 28, 29%. This is an example though. What if you had a credit card and it was 18% annual interest rate and you were making the minimum payment? Well, if you had a balance of $5,000, it would take you 16 and a half years to pay. You would have almost paid twice the amount, you see, in interest. So this just goes to show you how it's a bad practice to run up credit card debt and then just pay the minimum payments. Okay, how can you establish credit? So you're all students and you might be wondering, well, how can I establish credit responsibly? Well, one way to do it is to get a student credit card. And then they usually, it's a low fee or no fee. You have a small credit limit, but then once you graduate, they increase the credit limit. So you can get a student credit card, and that's a good idea. And then just make some small purchases on it and build up a credit history. So to build a good credit history, don't get overextended, pay on time. That's super important to pay on time. If you pay late, if you pay more than 30 days late, it gets reported to the credit bureau and it really affects your credit. And also if you pay a little bit late, just a day late, they will charge pretty high fee. These late fees are to the tune of like $35. Now, if that ever happens to you where you just lost track of time and you get stuck with a late fee, you can call up the credit card company and ask them to waive it as a one-time courtesy, and they usually will if you don't make a habit of it. Anyway, so the main thing to establish a good credit history is to get a credit card, make some small payments, make some small purchases on it. Obviously, you want to open a checking and a savings account, and paying on time is really important. 5 C's of credit. When you're trying to get a car loan or trying to get a credit card, this is what these creditors look for: your character. What's your willingness to abide by the terms of the loan? So let's talk about a car loan, because that's a consumer loan, which is the next chapter, but that's a little more more applicable than a credit card. So let's say you're trying to get a loan. They're going to see, how do we believe this person will repay the loan? Number one, that's character. Capacity. Do they make enough money to make the payments? Collateral. Do they own something of value to support the loan? So if you're getting a car loan, the car is collateral. If you can't pay, they're going to take the car. So you can get a lower rate with a car loan versus a personal loan with no collateral. Capital. Do they have unencumbered assets available? Do you have money in a savings account, in a checking, and investment account? And condition. What is the impact on the current economy on the loan? So if for example, y'all are too young to remember the whole financial meltdown, 2007 to 2009, but it went from really easy credit, being easy to get a loan, to overnight, it was very difficult to get a loan. And so that's an example of how the economy can impact your ability to get credit. All right. What are the warning signs if you're having issues with if you're having credit issues? If you can barely make the minimum payments required on your bills, that's a warning sign. You're making late payments. You consistently use a large portion of your available credit. So let's say you have a credit card with a $10,000 credit limit. If you've run it all the way up to the limit, that's a warning sign. What if you have to use one form of credit to pay your bills? So what if you're taking a cash advance from your credit card to pay a bill? That's not a good idea. I don't ever recommend taking these cash advances because the interest starts from day one when you take a cash advance. They charge you a fee, that's a percentage, and then they start charging you interest from day one. Whereas when you make purchases with a credit card, you have a month to pay it off. And then if you don't pay it off, they charge you interest. So you have a 30-day grace period. Okay, and then while I'm on that subject, one reason, this is what I strongly recommend, is when you have a credit card, some of you may have credit cards already, but use your credit wisely and beat these creditors at their own game. What do I mean by that? I mean, use your credit card, and if you have a credit card that gives you points or whatever, go ahead and use it, but pay it off every month. They don't like customers like that because they're not making any money off of this, but then you're not going to make any interest payments. So use your credit card wisely and pay it off every month. If you have a running balance, you're going to have to pay interest. So let's say, for example, if you had a balance of $50 or $100, $200 on your credit card, that's revolving credit, and you're going to continue to be charged interest on that every month. All right. So I kind of got sidetracked on that, but this got talking about the cash advance here made me think of that. So don't get a cash advance because you get charged interest right away, and then pay your credit card bills off monthly. If you're receiving calls from debt collectors, that's obvious warning sign. Credit applications being declined, have no emergency funds. So those are some warning signs that you're in trouble. Okay, how much credit should you have? What's your debt safety ratio? Well, that's simply your monthly credit card payments minus or divided by your monthly take-home pay. So how much pay do you take home after taxes and all? What are you actually receiving? What's your net monthly pay? And you divide your monthly credit card payments by your monthly pay, and it should not be more than 20%. Now, if you call for a car loan, they'll ask you this question. They'll ask you, what's your net take-home pay? And they'll ask you what your monthly payments are. They'll usually ask you for what your rent is and all this. But anyway, they're figuring out some kind of debt ratio. And when they ask you when they include rent or a house payment, they really don't like to see you go above 23 to 30%, usually above 30%. For a car loan, they might let you get as high as 50% on all. No, I'm talking about all of your monthly bills, fixed monthly bills. But this ratio is simply for credit card payments. So if you look at that, your monthly credit card payments should not be more than 15%. It shouldn't exceed 20%. The goal should be no more than 15%. All right. Let's see what they're saying here. Okay, so this is just what I've been telling you. You'll have a specific limit when you get a credit card. Credit cards are offered by various retailers and also by financial institutions. Pay the balance off monthly. Oh, and this has reminded me something too. A lot of these retailers, this is another really important thing to remember with this chapter. A lot of these retailers, they'll ask you, do you want to get a credit card and you can get 10% off, whatever. It's fine or 10% or 20%. That's fine if you're making a big purchase. But if you're only spending 50 or $100, it doesn't make much sense. Now, a lot of times, if you go to say Lowe's or Home Depot to make a large purchase, say you're buying appliances, they'll say, we have a special going on. If you get a credit card, it'll be no interest for the first 12 months. Okay, well, what that means is, it's true, you're not paying any interest for the first 12 months. But on the 13th month, if you haven't paid that credit card off, they're going to charge you back interest for the whole 12 months. So you're going to pay it anyway. So you want to beat them at their own game. Put a note in your phone or whatever on your computer, and make sure that, like, just to be on the safe side, by the 10th month, you pay that whole credit card off, so you don't get charged all the back interest. So I've done that several times when I've bought had major purchases at Home Depot or Lowe's. Used to be like stereo stores and appliance stores would have it too. Best Buy would have it probably sometimes still. But anyway, I'll make the minimum payment and then by the 10th month, I pay it all off. So you just want to make sure, a lot of people don't realize the fine print of those. No interest for 12 months or no interest for 24 months. If you don't pay it off by then, they're going to charge you the whole back interest on your outstanding balance. All right, bank credit cards. So you can get a Visa, MasterCard, Discover card. Those are issued by banks. And they usually will have a teaser rate, sometimes a low rate that'll last for a little while. But those are bank credit cards as opposed to retail credit cards. Also, you can get an American Express. I personally really like American Express because they almost always side with the customer. If you have, some subscription that you keep getting charged for, or if you have a problem with the retailer that won't give you a refund, you can just go online on your account and appeal it. And 99.9% of the time, they're going to side with you. Because what happens is they immediately will take the charge off, and it's on the onus, it's up to the merchant to prove that you should be charged. And so it almost always, they're really easy to work with. So I always use American Express for that reason when I use a credit card. So keep that in mind. All right. What other fees do they charge other than interest? Well, some of them charge an annual fee. If you get a cash advance, they'll charge a transaction fee. Or if you want to use it to pay off another loan or other debt, they'll charge a transaction fee. Balance transfers is what that is. So if you get an advance or a balance transfer, they'll charge you usually a 3 or 4% transaction fee. Late payments, if you go over the limit, they'll charge you a fee. There's the balance transfer fee. Foreign transaction fees, if you're using it in a foreign country, they might charge you a fee. If you get a cash advance at an ATM, of course, they're going to charge you a transaction fee. So anyway, there's a lot of fees involved. So you can think about, do you want to if you're going to run up, if you feel like you're going to have monthly, if you're not going to pay the credit card off monthly, then you would want to concentrate on getting a credit card with a low interest rate, maybe a higher annual fee, but a low interest rate. Or if you're interested in building up points, maybe you don't mind paying an annual fee. But if you're not going to run up, have a balance, a running balance, then the interest rate doesn't really matter, and you'd want to get a card with a low annual fee. So it just depends on your preference. Okay, so the special features of bank credit cards, you can get these reward cards, frequent flyer programs, merchandise rebates, and so forth. I know people, for example, have a Southwest card, and they use Southwest Airlines, and they use a credit card all the time. And then because they want to build up those miles, and they just pay it off monthly. So also, I know a lot of people have Costco cards. There's Costco in New Orleans. There's one on the North Shore. If you use a Costco card, they actually give you cash at the end of the year. They have a pretty good program. You can get a secured credit card. A lot of people have had to declare bankruptcy or don't have any credit. They'll get a secured credit card, which means you open up a bank account, say with Bank of America, and you put $500 in there. Then you would have a credit card where you can spend up to $500. It's a secured against that account, or however much money you have in the account. That's what a secured credit card is. You can get a student credit card, which we already talked about. Okay, we talked about the retail charge cards, department stores, gas cards, and so forth. They tend to have high interest rates, but you typically would want to pay those off monthly anyway. Debit cards, you all know what debit card is. You probably use a debit card. No one seems to use cash anymore. I've been using cash more lately because I'm really aggravated that especially restaurants now are charging a surcharge if you use a credit card or a debit card. So I'm trying to carry more cash instead of paying the 2 or 3% that they're adding on. But debit cards are nice to have. Just be careful with using your debit card at gas stations and online, because if your credit card is hacked, if your debit card is hacked, they can wipe out your whole account. So I typically will use a debit card for retail purchases face to face, but never online, and never at gas stations. All right. Now, when you apply for a credit card, you fill out an application and so forth, and there's 3 credit bureaus that you can look at to see what your credit score is. Like, some of these companies like Discover will tell you what your FICO score is. That's a credit scoring system. And these are the ranges. So your score ranges from 300 to 850. Of course, it varies by your income, varies by your age. The overall average is around 700. If you have a credit score of 720 or above, or 700, I guess the average, obviously it says the average is 700. So anything above 720 is considered to be pretty good. 720 to 850. So you want to strive for a good credit score. And how do you get that? Well, your payment history is the biggest thing. If you make your payments on time, you'll have a good credit score. Amounts owed means how much do you owe relative to what the limits are, and relative to your income. If you owe a lot, then that will affect your credit. And you see the history and the type of credit and new credit, that's not really that important. The main thing is your payment history and how much debt you have. All right. Now these companies have to disclose how much interest you're paying over the life of the loan and what the current rate is. Don't worry. And they also will have to tell you what the average daily balance is on your bill. Okay. Make sure you pay your credit cards by the due date, of course. You can shop around for the best deal. We talked about that. If your credit card is lost or stolen, just call them immediately. And then protect yourself from identity theft. Don't just, shred your bills. Of course, a lot of us have paperless billing now. And if people declare bankruptcy, then what happens when you declare bankruptcy typically is they freeze all your credit. They freeze all the credit cards, and they give you a payment plan. They lower the interest rates, and you have to make minimum payments. So there's Chapter 13 where you're making the payments to pay it off. That's the most common form of bankruptcy now. Chapter 7 is when they wipe the slate clean. But if you're a wage earner, if you declare bankruptcy, but you're earning a living, the judge will probably have it as a Chapter 13 and make you pay it off. It'll be a payment plan. Bankruptcy can negatively affect your credit for up to 10 years. So it's almost impossible to get a loan during that time. So you don't want to get yourself in that situation where you have to declare bankruptcy. All right, and then they're just repeating the rule of thumb again. All right, so this is just the long and the short of credit, and hopefully I tried to give you some good pointers, some good life lessons and good pointers for using credit responsibly. So feel free to text me if you have any questions, or send me an email. My cell is 985-640-2616. As you know, feel free to send me a text or an email if you have any questions. Thank you.